So the theme for the beginning of this year has been getting grounded and shifting our consciousness into an understanding of what poverty consciousness really is and to what extent are we harboring it within ourselves. In the Tuesday meditation, I talked about different types of poverty consciousness and indebtedness. In this group, I want to talk about a completely off-the-wall system of poverty consciousness that arrives here at this center on a regular basis, and I am always somewhat stymied by it. So when it occurred again yesterday and the day before yesterday and the day before that, I thought, okay, time to address this one. Lord Husband. And he disappeared. So I was like, okay, why is nobody talking about this? And then I realized Spirit always steps back and they don't want to engage in a dialogue or give guidance about something that is irrelevant or nonsensical. We human beings talk about a whole range of things, whether they are relevant or not. Our conversations are not focused. Our conversations are not necessarily an expression of who we are inside. A lot of people are talking just for the sake of talking. And then I thought, okay, if this topic is irrelevant, why am I having the experience over and over again? Why does it keep coming up for me to look at? And even as I asked the question, I realized the answer. It was for me to look at, for me to just set aside or come to terms with and put it over there. And that's regardless of what the topic is. If the universe is not responding, if the universe is blithely ignoring something, then you actually need to check why you're paying attention to it. Because the universe has decided it is irrelevant. But our brain, our consciousness, our human ego makes things relevant. It makes it important. Hence that entire game about taking things personally. And when we make it relevant, we shift our attention onto it and we get attached to it. We make ourselves right about it. We go into entire diva dramas about it. And before you know it, the silence of the universe, which is getting louder by the minute, has been completely ignored. I get a little bit concerned when the universe falls silent, because I can hear the universe all the time. There is a consistent and constant buzz in the universe, and when I tune in a little deeper, it manifests as actual thoughts or sounds or music or laughter or something more tangible. When I step out of it, out of that particular zone, it's just that gentle hum that's there. When that disappears, I know I must pay attention to some ego game that is now obscuring the buzz. I am giving you this information so that you know what's going on inside of you when you are grappling with something and there doesn't seem to be a connection. It's as if you've got a crackling line, because that's how that silence feels for me. Or your WhatsApp call is dipping horrendously to the extent that you're actually dropping the call altogether in digital terms. I can't explain that now. Can we talk about that? Okay. Dwaku says, what does that mean, drop a call? He doesn't understand that. How can you drop a call? Okay. He always gets confused with all of the technology. So here I am with the silence around this particular, never mind the topic, it's just this silence that we must focus in on. And while I was sitting and I was working with this, I could feel this profound pain in the universe, just flowing through me. And by profound, I mean it was huge, it was deep, it was intense. And as it flowed through me, I realized that this is exactly what the universe bears witness to all the time. I had the feeling and I had the thought that I wanted to pinch myself or scratch myself in some physically painful way that would then register or make tangible that flowing feeling of pain within me. So for a split second there, I understood how people can go into a self-destructive, abusive behavior physically when they are needing to find an expression for this pain that they're feeling, this profound pain inside of them that they have no words for, that they cannot explain to others. And I also had a blinding moment of realizing how much of the world must be in pain for it to be a consistent and constant stream of consciousness that can manifest in my being as its own flow. And these are just observations from one moment of grappling with something completely different with the universe. This is an interesting life. And even as I felt it, I did my usual go-to. I went to the Lord Husband. That's where I go to. That's my go-to place. So I said, Lord Husband, please forgive us, bless us. We know not what we do. And I want you to just think about that statement for a moment. When Jesus Christ said it all of those years ago, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. A lot of people took it that they were ignorant of who He was. When people have read the Bible, they've taken it literally, instead of looking at the understanding that here, where we live in our limited perception and understanding of ourselves and the illusions within which we are playing, we actually have no bloody idea what we're doing. We know not what we do. We cannot see or feel or know the ripple effect of our thoughts and experiences beyond our own field of perception. We have no idea. So there I was saying to the Lord Husband, forgive us and bless us. We know not what we do. And I got this big smiley sort of feeling, almost like laughter, like the Lord Husband was having a good giggle at my expense with a still, again. Like, oh, okay, again. You know? It's like an indulgent acceptance, an indulgent acceptance that of course you're doing that again. You've done it before, you're going to do it again, and again, and again. That's how it is. So I had to stop and look at that. Because when the Lord Husband is laughing at me, I don't like it. It means I've missed something important. He's having a giggle at my expense. And when he literally laughs out loud and you get that belly laugh feeling coming at you, then you know you really, really have to pay attention. So, I took a deep breath in and I went, what's the joke? And he said, haven't you understood yet that life, as you know it on the physical plane, is a repetitive cycle? Everything about you is a repetitive cycle. Part of your struggle as a human being is to master that cycle. Everything is operating in repetitive cycles. Part of your struggle as a human being is to rise above that cycle. But the nature of human life is that it is a repetitive cycle. The mind doesn't grasp that, despite the fact that it operates in a repetitive cycle, constantly. I mean, we've said before, the problem with history is that it repeats itself. It repeats itself. We know these things. And yet, our awareness of it is lost in the winds. It's shifting on a breeze somewhere. The sun is shining 24/7, but we perceive a cycle of day and night. And so we work with that repetitive cycle to order our days. We know the lunar calendar, so we order our days around repetitive cycles over which we have no control. And we accept that it just is. Scientists go and study it and they tell us all about it, but we know it just is. It's part of creation. We have repetitive cycles in our bodies. that we live by all the time. But without the awareness of it, and therefore mastery of it within ourselves, we get caught up in repetitive use and abuse of the cycle. So of course, when it comes to ruining the planet and sliding into fear and going crazy and nuts and forgetting why we're here, a repetitive cycle. I mean, I had a friend last year who was always saying, every 8,000 years, this planet comes to an end. More or less 8,000 years, this planet comes to an end. All of the human beings on it disappear. It replenishes itself with a grand flood or the ice age or something, and then new life arises. And I thought that was a very cheerful thought, actually, that the universe will manage a planet that is in self-destruction at the moment. And that self-destruction as a cycle happens in interaction with us as human beings. That self-destruction of the planet out there in the illusion is a manifestation of the self-destruction we are engaging in within ourselves. And for me, this is a huge part of our poverty consciousness. What started this whole dialogue, the topic of it, was somebody said, "Oh, aren't you afraid of being too happy?" And I thought, okay, no, I've never been afraid of being too happy. And just very by the way, I'm not even happy. My understanding of happiness, other than she works brilliantly for me in this house, my understanding of happiness is that it is this elusive ego game where there is an attachment to something outside of you that is making you happy or making you sad or stimulating a series of emotions within you that you then label as happiness. I am not happy. I am peaceful. I am abundant. I am content. I like my life. I like where I'm going and not going and all of the craziness that's unfolding in it. So this is not happiness for me. This is peace of mind and the assurance that if and when the shit hits the fan, which it must because this is human life, if and when the shit hits the fan, I will rise to the occasion and manage the fan. Let the shit fall where it may. That's my whole thing at the moment. Whatever's going on, it's going on and I am capable of managing it. That gives me peace of mind. The assurance that I can. The assurance that I am, and I have a whole universe to back me up if I need it. Done. I am not happy. And just for the record, I am not nicer either. I am. Okay. I am nicer. Alright. So here's this thing about being scared to be happy. Because if you're too happy, there's a price to be paid for that. If you are too happy, the equal and opposite of that, called suffering and sorrow, must arrive to ruin it. This is self-destructive thinking. And it is superstition. It is superstition of the worst order. When everything is going right, we tell ourselves something must go wrong because that's how life is. We even have a law for it called Murphy's Law. It's not spiritual law, it's Murphy's Law. Have any of you ever met Murphy?
Yes.
You have?
He was on my class list.
So you know that Murphy is not to be trusted to make a law. Certainly not the Murphy who created the law. And we have all of these rules in our minds. Another one was, don't let people know how happy you are. And this one I've known from the time I was little, because it's like if you're too happy and other people know it, they're going to be envious, they're going to be jealous, they're going to be resentful, they're going to be all sorts of things. And then you have to turn salt to clear all of that negative vibration that's going to come at you as a result of other people's thinking. Yeah? I remember Charmaine turning salt for me a couple of times in this house. It's awesome. We use salt as a cleansing of any low vibrational energy that is attaching it to yourself. But here's the thing. Surely in our practice as spiritual beings, we have risen above other people's negative thoughts and negative emotions sufficiently to own and hold our own spaces. What is wrong, really, what is wrong with sharing joy, with sharing peace, and sharing your assurance, your faith in the world? There's nothing wrong with that. And if you have a fear that sharing that is going to attract negativity, then you're not as joyful or assured or confident or peaceful as you are pretending to be. Because those very qualities shift you upward. They heighten your energy system. They lighten your being. You rise above the lower vibrations of other people's negative thoughts. The notion that you should behave in order to manage other people's thinking is an unspiritual one. The notion that you can even control other people's thinking or limit it in some way is a negative one. You can, from my experience, have great fun with other people's thinking. I'm sure you've all heard the story about me saying to Charmaine and Fatima, other people do not know what to think. So we must get all dressed up and we must go to that party and they must take one look at the three of us and they must know what to think. They must be saying, why are you girls so happy? Why are you so colorful and abundant when the rest of us are dull, gray, black and white? And they did. They took one look at us and any other thoughts that they were having went straight through, what do you people know that we don't? Why? Because we put our joy and we put our color and we put our confidence out there and we didn't hide. If superstition is teaching you to hide, if superstition is teaching you that the world is going to drag you down even as you are building your wings, then you do not need superstition of any kind. Everywhere I go, people stroke my hair. You know, they actually put their hands out and they stroke my hair, total strangers. And as you all know, I don't like being touched by strangers. I don't like people invading my energy system. But lately I've gotten accustomed to this thing because the French like kiss you twice on both cheeks and you just kind of go with the flow. So people get in your space and they touch you and they like stroke your hair. And as they're stroking my hair, sometimes I can feel that they're just loving it. You know, they're liking it. They're being nice. There's a clean energy. And sometimes I can feel they're stroking it, wishing it was theirs. And then sometimes I can feel that they're stroking it and there's just good old-fashioned envy. That's got nothing to do with my hair. My hair is just my hair. And yes, of course it's beautiful because I wash it from time to time. Yeah, and I do those salon treatments and you know, I get like a little vain about it now and again. But here's the thing. Every one of those people is stroking the same thing and having a completely different reaction. This is not my hair. My hair is the stimulant. It is the object. Nothing more than a growing, getting in other people's tomato sauce while I'm across the table object. They are coming from their own projections. Their insecurities, their desires, their thinking, their fears, all of that stuff is determining how they are behaving. What has this got to do with me? I'm not going to cut my hair. I'm not going to wrap it up in a scarf and hide it. I'm still going to wash it, right? Yeah. Why should I change who I am in order to manage other people's thinking? Why should I start to live an untruth within myself in order to manage other people's thinking? This is a big pretense and a game that we play that then brings us right back to poverty consciousness. That I have to be less so the world doesn't prevent me from becoming more. Have you ever heard anything more ludicrous in terms of your logic? Think about this. I have to be less, show less, do less, express less, so that the world, which is a big fat illusion, does not prevent me from being more. Who's preventing you from being more already? I'm glad Marushan got that one, even if everybody over here is being quiet and nobody is shouting back at me. I don't know why we create these ridiculous notions. Where do these stupid, completely ignorant of the world and creation rules come from? And don't say religion, because it isn't just religion. It's sitting there in a whole range of things. It's sitting there in all of these westernized books about how to manifest your greatest desires, and all of your greatest desires are connected to the earthly plane. Not one of those books is saying, if you desire oneness with God, leave all of this earthly plane manifestation behind, take a deep breath in, shut up and sit still for a long time. Let go of all of your superstitious fears. Let go of all of these other notions of how other people are controlling your thinking and your feeling and your being, and express your truth in one clear signal to the universe. Not one of those books is saying that, because it won't take a whole bloody book. Why are we shouting? Because you're shouting. Okay. We're shouting. We have to start thinking with clarity. We have to start questioning this so-called logic from which we work. Anything that is based in fear does not exist. Another part of this whole system is something called retaliation. Okay? I can't say that because so-and-so might retaliate in some way, and so I'm afraid of the retaliation. I am afraid of the consequences. And then I ask, what creates that fear of the consequences? Surely, if you are expressing and being your truth, whatever the consequences, they're consequences. The truth will set you free of the consequences. And then you get a bit of a silence, and then you get, well, you know, and then I understand. The retaliation is not necessarily in terms of what you are saying or doing now. The retaliation is in terms of all your other secrets that are sitting there. All of the other information about everything you might possibly have done wrong in the world that might come and slap you in the face. That's what the retaliation fear is. And there seems to be an unspoken agreement. If you do this to me, I'm going to do that to you. And then when I do that to you, you're going to do that to me. And now we're living Romeo and Juliet. And the feud between two families, and everybody's forgotten how it started. This is an escalation of fear, a complete loss of trust in self, complete loss of any focus on the truth or intention, and we get caught up in a web of poverty consciousness, because retaliation may or may not exist. The fear of retaliation is enough to stop us from doing anything. And I am giving you the small scale example. We have massive contexts of the fear of retaliation in every society at the moment. Politically and financially speaking, this fear of retaliation is everywhere. Evil thrives where good men do nothing. Why do they do nothing? The fear of retaliation. And so our consciousness gets trapped and caught up in that specific space where it wallows as if it is sitting in quicksand. All intelligence is disappearing into the quicksand, and the consciousness that is required to change the world is disappearing with it. We must pay attention inside. Everybody makes mistakes. When the retaliation comes, rise above it if it comes. But here's what you're doing in our thinking. We're bullying ourselves in our thinking. That's what we're doing. I can't do this because that might happen and that might happen and those other people might say that, and so you've bullied yourself into doing nothing. You don't need a strong arm in the playground of life to bully you then into being less and doing less. You've done it yourself. Now I can almost hear coming at me from this side of myself, meaning from my computer, I can hear a whole range of thoughts about how life, real life in all of those places where you have to go to work, real life in the corporate arena, real life in the courtrooms and the justice system, real life in any government department, real life in that world outside of this particular sanctuary, doesn't allow for all of the things I'm saying. So I am living in La La Land, while all of you are living in the real world, where all of those problems are going to determine who you are. Have I got it right? Nah? See? Only Maris has the courage to be nodding her head over there. That real world that you live in, that is challenging you, that is putting you on the spot every day, that is demanding that you bring your awareness to every interaction. You get to choose. Do I spend my whole life reacting to and managing that illusion? Or do I spend the rest of my life responding in terms of who I am inside out? You get to choose. Because the reality inside of you that has lived across aeons of time, and this brings me right back to the beginning of the chat, when the Lord husband said what? Still? Again? That timelessness that has come around and come around and come around. Whatever the challenges in your so-called real life, it's come around. You've been there and you've done that. And if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. Don't you just love these cliches? They're so useful when you're channeling stuff. Everybody instantly gets like the big picture on the cliche. Works for me. Yeah. What you think is your real life world out there is where you're playing the game. It's like when you open up the Monopoly board and the banker hands out notes and then you're quietly stealing more from the bank and all sorts of things. You can do that with the Monopoly board because it's just a game. It's going to get folded up and put back in the box and put away, and you're going to go out for drinks or have supper or something. You're going to have fun playing this game, no matter who owns Elof Street. You know this. You know this about any game that you're playing, that it will end, and that when it ends, you're going to get on with something else the rest of your life. Why don't you know that about the game you're playing at work? Why don't you know that about the game you're playing in traffic? That is part of a repetitive cycle. It was Khayyam who said that we are like chess pieces on a board, and that God is moving those chess pieces hither and thither on the board. And then when he gets bored, he puts all of the chess pieces back in the box and packs it away until the next time. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Read it, it's fabulous poetry. Sufi poet, metaphysical poetry. Brilliant. Over the ages, all through the history of mankind, we have talked about the fact that there is a force beyond our knowledge, beyond our ken. We have talked about the fact that all of creation, as it is mysterious and enigmatic, that there's more going on than we know about. We have talked about the fact that we are living cycles. Scientists have proved it, that we are nothing more than repetitive cycles going on and on and on. So why are we sitting in our lives behaving as if we are oblivious to these three essential truths that are there? We know them. They're there. Why are we taking them for granted and not living them so that they become a way, a foundation system for us to get out of the cycle? Because that's what the Buddha said. You are here to challenge yourself and master yourself and shift outside of the cycle of birth and death. Shift out of the repetitive cycle of lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. That's why we're here, according to the Buddha. According to Dwal Kul, we're here because we like to have fun. And this is fun. This is entertaining. This is where you get to drop a call. You get to pick it up as well. Okay. You get to drop a call and pick up a call and do all sorts of crazy things. You get to tap on a keyboard and the world can explode around you. You get to use one stupid word and before you know it, the whole world has heard you say it. See? It's a totally different era from when Dwal Kul was on the planet. If he wanted to say something to somebody, he had to go and find them and say it. He didn't write letters at the time. No emails, none of that. Now, when we're living in a world of faster, quicker communication, we've bought into that external reality and we are not aware that in fact, all of that is for us to play with. It's going to get put back in a box along with your physical body and put away while you get on with your life. This is an essential truth. You know this. This is not news, people. So all these things that are happening there, keeping us in poverty consciousness, keeping us stuck in our fears, keeping us obscure in our visions of self. Because you are not here manifesting the physical plane. You are here manifesting your potential. Everything that was placed there in your contract with yourself before you were born. You are manifesting your potential, which exists in the now moment. So when a client says to me, if I do this and if I do that, will I get that? I'm like, okay, where would you like me to sign this guarantee for you? Because here's the thing, it's not about if you do this and if you do that. It's not like if you get in your car and drive up the road on the N2, will you get to the pavilion? Well, even that isn't a guarantee, right? You can get in your car and drive that way, but you might miss the turnoff. You might hit a truck. Anything can happen. You might get stuck in the traffic. You might get detoured by the cops. Who knows? This is it. So there's no guarantee of anything. But what does work is how you're doing it. With what awareness are you doing it? So if you say to me, if I do this like this, with that consciousness, and then flow into that, there's a process. I flow into that with that awareness and that consciousness. Is this now possible? Does it become more tangible in my reality, in my energy field? Am I creating that? Yes, dearest, you are manifesting it. Go for it. And this is how you make miracles. We call it a miracle because we really don't expect it to happen, right? That's why. We really don't expect it to happen. That's why we call it a miracle. And then, of course, if you listened on Tuesday, there are people who need more than a miracle. Hyman. So, this repetitive cycle that we are living inside of ourselves, in the mass consciousness, as a planet, there are always these different levels of the same thing. Each of us has the capacity. In fact, each of us has the free will, never mind capacity. We have the immense gift of free will to stop the cycle, to consciously work with the cycles of creation, because that is, you cannot stop the moon from its lunar cycle of 28 days. You cannot do that. It is. You cannot stop the tides. It is. You can stop your silly thinking. That isn't. It isn't. Anything that is in creation is. That's not an illusion. Everything else that you have built around it and attached to it, that's the illusion. That's what we need to shift. That's what we need to realign inside of ourselves. So after all of this dialoguing, interesting conversations, my Native American guide was falling about with laughter. He was just falling about with laughter because it's a question of how often do we have to have the same conversation? Which, of course, is the repetitive cycle of the human brain. So I said, we'll have to keep having these conversations until I understand it fully. Because every time I have the conversation, I understand something else and something else and something else. And it gets to me. So yes, repetitive conversations. And he was still laughing at me. So I thought, the whole universe is laughing at me, and I was sounding like a spoilt brat. Like, why is everybody just laughing at me all of the time? And then I realized, Spirit doesn't know how to cry. They don't get sad about my stupidity. They don't get depressed or upset or angry or irritated or annoyed or any of those ridiculous negative things when I don't know something or I don't get it immediately or anything. They just laugh at me because it is funny. And laughter is light. So Demir was completely right when he was saying laughter is like the best meditation. And they laugh at me, and the sound of that laughter actually clears things. It helps me to think. They don't criticize or judge. They just laugh at me or smile at me. Or they get silent in order for me to pay attention to why are they saying nothing. All of these little ways of communicating with my consciousness and with my thinking simultaneously, in accordance with rules that I understand for myself. So I know when they fall silent, I must pay attention to something. You might have established a different rule. You might have established the rule that when you're going off track, you must literally stumble over something and have to catch yourself before you fall. That would be you. I'm now pointing the finger at Charmaine. That would be you, Miss Calamity. You might have asked for a different way of catching up with yourself or catching yourself. You might have asked that every robot, that you must get a stop signal everywhere you go, non-stop, for a week or so. Every time as you approach the robot, it is going red. That would be you, right? Yeah, that would be Marushan. The universe is going to work in accordance with your needs. They make no rules. What are the rules you've made to get your attention? What rule did you make? The Wi-Fi must switch off? Yeah, that's his rule. The Wi-Fi must shut down, and then Lou will wake up and go, okay, what happened? Yeah? Yeah?
For a week.
There you go. Okay, in case you didn't hear that, Lou is saying his Wi-Fi has been off for a week. So, consider for yourself just what is going on. Where are you being stopped? How are you being stopped? To pay attention to what you are taking for granted, what you are being oblivious to, and yet they are truths for you. They are truths designed to make you more. They are truths designed to keep you in, admittedly, a repetitive cycle, but a higher flow of that, a lighter flow of exactly that repetitive cycle. We like repetitive cycles. We love routines. But we want uplifting, empowering routines. We want routines that nurture us. We are a ritualistic lot. We want the ritual that makes us feel good. We want to pin ourselves down with specific dates, hence birthdays and anniversaries, right? We do this. We want the good of it, so that when the so-called challenging stuff comes, we're in a good, stable foundation space to manage it. We want plans. We want to go places within ourselves and then into the world from ourselves and with ourselves. But to do that, we can't be stumbling all over the place. We can't be getting disconnected. We can't be going blind and deaf suddenly. We can't be getting our noses out of joint. We have to be present. And these are all of the ways of being present. holding your awareness. So in that crazy corporate courtroom, whatever world you're living in, you are still present in your own sacred space. That is you, your entire energy system, 12 bodies, 308 chakras directly connected to source as a channel of divine energy is present. And then all you have to do is shine. If the moth gets too close and it burns its wings, it will fly into you again and again and again until it stops. You shine. That's what you do. You shine doing what you do. That's what you do. You don't hide. You don't pretend you're not there. You don't pretend to be somebody else. Because you go to work for a majority of your life. And in your workplace, where you spend a majority of your life, and you are lying to yourself for a majority of your life, who are you poisoning the most? What contribution are you making to the mass consciousness that you come here for 2 hours of every week to change? 8 hours a day, you come here 2 hours once a week. Really? This is an imbalance. You should come here for 8 hours a day and go to work for 2 hours. If this is how we're going, don't stop nodding at me. If this is how we're going to manage the mass consciousness, you're spending too much time pretending to be something that you're not, and not shining enough. We are so incredibly blessed that there is an entire world of truths, a universal intelligence that holds those truths for us, that is easily available to us. Why do we pretend that it isn't there? Why must we live disconnected from that in order to keep other people's purported truths and rules and superstitions and fears alive? And on that note, let us meditate.